Okay, well, welcome everybody. Doug and Alea again. In this session, we want to talk about unconscious anxiety and how it arises. And specifically, it's a problem that we've seen a lot. Alea, why don't you define the problem?
So the unconscious anxiety arises when you are in relationship with somebody, you're having a conversation, and they essentially say to you, I want you to do X. And you don't really want to do X, but you are willing to do X just to please them, to get them off your back. You don't want to offend them. You don't want them to attack you. You don't want them to shame you. You don't want them to manipulate and control you. So you essentially say yes to something you don't want to do, which means now you're not being loyal to yourself, honoring yourself, slipping into the role of being the pleaser.
So another way of thinking about this is, why is it that it's so hard to say no when that's the appropriate thing to do? All right, so Alea, you want to start?
So one of the reasons why we are really afraid of saying no, especially to people that we love or have a certain amount of authority over us in our life, like somebody who's a colleague or even a boss, a mother, a father, a parent figure. The reason that you don't want to say no is because you have given them responsibility for validating you, for supporting you, for creating a safe space for you. There is a particular need, and you gave that responsibility for that need away, hoping that if you do everything they want, you never push back, you always say yes, then you will get that need met. They'll connect with you, they'll appreciate you, they'll respect you, they'll validate you, they'll support you, they'll be there for you, they'll back you up, they'll provide a safe container for you physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually. And it doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it's almost like the Charlie Brown moment of like, oh, I got you, but then the next moment they don't. And then there's this deep sense of betrayal, especially with people that we really deeply love. And all of this is unconscious. People aren't even aware they're doing it. And you might not even be aware that you're saying yes to something that you don't even want to say yes to, but you get this like annoyed, irritated, frustrated, resentful energy inside yourself, emotion inside yourself. You're just like, oh, I did it again. But we don't unpack all of the layers around that. And so the very first piece to start recognizing is step one: when somebody asks you to do something and you don't want to do it, pause before you go, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Pause. You could even use the affect labeling or the validating, and you could say, so you really want me to do X, Y, and Z. And if I do X, Y, and Z, that'll be really lovely for you. That'll feel really safe, really soothing, really important for you. You could just respond with that, just to buy yourself a little bit of time. And as you're buying yourself some time, you could start feeling into, why do I not want to say no? What responsibility have I given them, hoping they'll meet my needs? And in previous conversations, Doug and I have talked about your needs. And whenever you give responsibility for your needs away, you immediately move actually into a disempowered place. And we also move into the victim mentality. And then we feel like a victim when we create a victim scenario. And so when you start being aware of these needs that you have and retrieving responsibility for these needs off of others, meeting those needs deep in your core, you start moving into more of your power. And then you move into the ability to deflect, redirect, compassionately, neutrally, no trigger, no charge, say no. I'm not saying this is easy. There are lots of little micro steps of how to do this, but that is my overview on what happens when somebody asks you to do something you don't want to do.
So my sense of it is that when people ask you to do something that you don't want to do, you may agree to do it because you don't want to look bad. Because we were all raised with the idea of not being selfish, of being selfless, and of helping others and caring others. And there are people who take advantage of that training, that conditioning, and will ask and ask and ask and ask and never give back. I experienced this in my professional life, and I tolerated it for a long time, always thinking that my colleagues had my interests at heart to the same degree that I thought that I had their interests at heart. And I got screwed over and over again. And I always like Alea said, Charlie Brown and Lucy in the football. Every fall, Charlie Brown is out there thinking Lucy's going to hold the ball for him, and he goes running and kicks it. And sure enough, she can't help herself. She pulls the football away, and Charlie Brown ends up ass over tea kettle. And that's a really common experience. So how do you get out of that? The way I got out of it was to realize that the relationship that I thought was important was not as important as I thought it was. I was overvaluing the relationship. And I recognized that the relationship would be stronger if I said no, because if the person who took the no as a complete rejection and got angry at me and called me names or said I was selfish, then that person really wasn't in a relationship with me. If I said, no, I'm sorry, I just can't do that, and the person said, oh, well, okay, well, thanks for allowing me to ask, that's a relationship that probably has some strengths to it. So one of the cool things about saying no is that you can really test out how strong the relationship really is. If you say no, and you say it in a nice, polite way, so no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Or no, I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. Or no, I'm just not going to do that. No, not going to happen. No, I'm sorry, just can't do that right now. And they become annoyed with you or irritated or start insulting you or disrespecting you. That is a real indicator about the relationship. Now, I'm assuming, of course, that you're a generous human being and you would normally give willingly, but you're at a point in time in a relationship where maybe you've given more than you should, and you're feeling resentful when people ask you. That's when it's time to start saying no. If it's a balanced relationship, you should be able to say no. And as Alea and I teach, if you're in a relationship with another person, an intimate relationship, and you should ask for your needs to be met, but you should always understand that your partner may say no, and that you have to be okay with that no. And you can't get upset or feel rejected if your partner says no. You have to be ready for it. You have to accept the no.
Well, I'm going to dive into that. It's not that you can't get upset. If you get upset, that's an indicator that you're not meeting your own needs.
There you go.
And so we really want to honor the emotions and the upset. And when you do get upset because you just asked for a need and somebody says no to you on that one, ask yourself, where am I not meeting my own needs? Because our intimate relationships are often a reflection of how we're meeting our needs deep in our core.
Right. So the point here is that learn the power of no and use it to test the strength of relationships. And don't be afraid if somebody gets upset with you. So as we teach, let's suppose that somebody asks, could you please go to the store and get me a can of beans? And you say, no, I can't do that. I won't do that. And then, well, you're so selfish. What's wrong with you? And you immediately come back and say, you're frustrated and angry. You feel disrespected and you feel unappreciated. Yeah. And you're sad and concerned. Well, yeah. And you're really kind of pissed off because you are. Yeah. Now you just de-escalated them and said, well, okay, that's, you feel that way. And you leave it at that. You don't say, well, I'll go to the store for you. You don't capitulate. You just say no, but now you've de-escalated the person and they're no longer upset at you for having said no because you've calmed their feelings down. It works like a miracle every single time. So there are plenty of tools that you have to deal with people who get angry at you when you say no. Maybe you're afraid somebody will reject you if you say no. Well, again, you can affect label that person. It'll become obvious. They'll go from when you say, so you're really upset and angry and frustrated. Yeah. And you feel disrespected and unappreciated and unsupported. Yeah. You feel a little sad. Yeah, I do. Okay. And that's all you have to say. You don't have to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'll go to the store after all. No, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is calm them down. And once they're calmed down, they'll accept the no, usually with some grace. And if they don't, then as I said before, you got to really look at that relationship and say, what's going on here? More tools, Alea?
Yeah, I'm just reflecting, and we'll wrap up in just a moment, but this last year and a half, 2 years of being in the type of environment that we've been in, where we've had to isolate, we've had to pull away from a lot of relationships, and now we're re-engaging in relationships. This last year, you may have taken a lot of time reflecting upon how invested you are in relationships and how invested other people are in their relationships with you. Who were the people that showed up in your life in this last year? And who are the people that you really value in your life? And so often as an empath or a pleaser or a recovering pleaser or a healer or one who is of service, what we'll unconsciously do is we'll overinvest in relationships. And then we feel like we're always there for them. And we don't even realize that it's not reciprocal. And because it doesn't have a reciprocal energy, that essentially means that you're in a relationship where you're simply being of service, which is great, wonderful. It's a place where you have the opportunity to give, but it might be a pro bono moment, which is fine. So it might be a pro bono moment with mom, or it might be pro bono moment with a friend, where you're really showing up for them. You're really investing in them and their life. But we can start to unconsciously or consciously become resentful and frustrated and feel drained and overwhelmed and exhausted when we unconsciously expect our needs to be met by these relationships that we've invested into and others haven't invested in us. And so that can create a tremendous amount of grizzle and unconscious behavior, passive aggressive remarks, little biting remarks, little like snide put downs that you're like, wow, why did I say that? I can't believe I was just so rude to that person that I love. Was I not nice? Oh, it's because there's been this unconscious building of this resentment because you've been overly invested in the relationship, not recognizing that they're not as invested in you. And so again, I'm not saying that it's good or bad, or that you should pull yourself out of relationships where people are not invested in you. Recognize that that is a moment of service where you get to show up and ask nothing from them. This is just an opportunity for you to serve, for you to listen, for you to validate, and meeting all of your needs deep in your core instead of looking for your needs externally.
So we give you permission to say no. And you now have the right and the privilege to say no to whoever you want to say, whenever you want to say it. And there may be consequences, but you now how to deal with the consequences. You calm people down, and then you go on with your life. And when you start saying no, you will feel so empowered and so happy, because all of a sudden you feel like you've got power in your own life. You feel like you're in charge. So just say no.
And from the recovering pleaser perspective, baby steps. A baby step before you just go flat out hardcore Doug Knoll trial lawyer recovering mode of no, I'm not able to do that at this time. So in the beginning, with the idea of just saying no to somebody who's asking for something that I don't have the bandwidth for, I would have to feel into, I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the energy, I don't have the time. I'm really not able to do that at this time. I don't give them all of my reasons of why I'm not able to do it. I just say, I'm not able to do this for you at this time. And I hope you understand that. Again, recovering pleaser. So slowly start working into a way of honoring yourself, honoring your bandwidth, your capacity, being elegant, being graceful, being kind. And eventually you'll be like, oh, yeah, I can't do that. Or no. Oh, okay, okay.
Sorry, I can't do that.
But do we even want to say sorry?
Pardon me?
We might not even want to say sorry. Sorry, I
Yeah.
can't do that. Well, I mean,
Say-
that'd be like a slow, gentle way into the no.
Right, or just say no.
No.
Nope, can't do that, sorry.
So honor your process,
Honor your process.
baby
But
steps.
the most important thing is to have the power to say no, even in the kind, gentle, graceful way that Leah suggests, is not to feel that you have to soothe somebody else's anxiety, or you have to soothe your own anxiety by saying yes. If you're anxious around saying no, that's a great indication that you want to think about your own anxiety and what you need to do to soothe your own anxiety when you say no. And where's that anxiety coming from? And what other ways can you manage that anxiety so that it does not compel you to do something that you don't want to do?
i.e. retrieve responsibility for meeting your needs off of this person. And that decreases the anxiety
That's right.
because then you're not afraid of loss.
Right.
There we go.
Okay, I think that's a cut.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.